Venezuela.
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 You probably haven't heard much about Venezuela until recently with the kidnapping of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. But what if I were to tell you that the USA has long been intervening in Venezuelan affairs throughout multiple administrations?
Se ha decidido que la Fuerza Armada mantenga en custodia al presidente saliente, al presidente Chávez, y que se conforme entonces en lo inmediato un gobierno de transición.
To understand why and how this keeps happening, we have to go back in time. It all began in 1895 with the Monroe Doctrine, an American foreign policy stance that was created by President James Monroe alongside his Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams. It functionally claimed Latin America, the US's backyard, as its exclusive sphere of influence, while discouraging US involvement in European affairs. The principle of isolationism has long since been thrown away. The Monroe Doctrine has, however, served as a pretext for US imperialism and intervention in Latin America throughout the 20th century, and to this day. In Venezuela, this doctrine has been used to steal profits, oil, and to enforce geopolitical subordination through coups, kidnappings, and sanctions. And with Venezuela holding the largest proven oil reserves in the world, estimated at around 303 billion barrels, which is about 18% of the entire world's proven oil reserves, the US serves the interests of transnational oil companies and finance capital, such as Standard Oil and ExxonMobil. If you'd like to learn more about topics like these, check out our free online encyclopedia, polowiki.org. It's like Wikipedia, but without the liberal propaganda. Strictly Marxist-Leninist. With 5,200 articles and counting, you can read or write for free in 8 languages. Throughout the 1980s, Latin American countries were forced to adopt the Washington Consensus as a condition for loans from the US-dominated International Monetary Fund and World Bank. It's a set of 10 neoliberal economic policies which promote austerity, privatization, and for a country to open its markets to Western finance capital. Venezuela was accordingly hit with privatizations, currency liberalization, and cuts in all forms of social spending, and the aforementioned opening up of its economy to transnational capital. These policies created an environment of impoverishment. As state-owned assets were sold off, unemployment skyrocketed. The Caracazo were a series of massive protests in 1989 that erupted in response to a government package of price increases, an IMF-backed program. The streets of the capital, Caracas, were quickly blocked amid the insurrection of working-class Venezuelans. The state, under Carlos Andrés Pérez, brutally repressed the people, with thousands killed and many more wounded. Hugo Chavez, the founder of Chavismo and of modern-day Venezuela, was a lieutenant colonel in the Venezuelan army turned Marxist, who took charge during this brutal repression. Chavez started agitating through electoral channels and eventually took charge of the spontaneous revolt of the masses in order to lead them as a vanguard of the people. He convinced them that the traditional parties and co-opted unions were complicit in the austerity. In 1992, Chavez led the February coup attempt. While the coup itself failed, it was a political victory, marked by Chavez's slogan, Por ahora, for now.
Primero que nada, quiero dar buenos días a todo el pueblo de Venezuela. Y este mensaje bolivariano va dirigido a los valientes soldados que se encuentran en el Regimiento de Paracaidistas Aragua y en la Brigada Blindada de Valencia. Compañeros, lamentablemente, por ahora, los objetivos que nos planteamos.
Chavez was imprisoned, where he became a symbol of resistance as the supporters grew more infuriated with the state. He was pardoned 2 years later in 1994. Following his imprisonment, Chavez decided to switch tactics due to his popular support and engaged with the electoral system. In December 1998, he won the presidency, running on nationalizing Venezuelan oil, anti-corruption, and redistributive policies. The people were exhausted by widespread neoliberal impoverishment, political delegitimization, and meddling by international agencies like the IMF. With Chavez nationalizing oil and using the revenue to fund programs, health improved, illiteracy was nearly eradicated, and communal councils were established that lifted the lives of the working class. Things changed in 2002 with a US-orchestrated coup attempt against Hugo Chavez. Between April 11th and 14th of 2002, Chavez went live on TV, firing the board of directors of the state oil company PDVSA.
Está despedido también. Muchas gracias por su servicio. Señor Juan Fernández, está despedido de Petróleos de Venezuela. Usted fue hasta el día de hoy gerente funcional de planificación y control de finanzas. Vean ustedes el nivel de esta gente. Se convirtieron en saboteadores de una empresa que es de todos los venezolanos.
This led the bourgeoisie, church leaders, and labor unions to unite against Chavez with the backing and planning of the US. This was short-lived, but it can be seen as a first attempt by the US to oust a leader of the Chavismo movement within Venezuela, the second being Maduro. Between 2003 and 2004, despite constant sabotage by the imperial core, Chavez introduced and expanded multiple social programs. He continued to expand housing and healthcare programs, utilizing oil revenue while striking deals with anti-imperialist allies like Russia and China, until 2013, when he died and Nicolas Maduro was chosen as his successor. Nicolas Maduro began his political career as a student activist within Liga Socialista at the age of 18 and later worked as a bus driver, founding a trade union at the Caracas Metro. While still part of the Liga Socialista at the age of 24, he was sent to Cuba to attend a one-year course within the Young Communist League. After this course, he was tasked with joining the Revolutionary Bolivarian Movement, or MBR 200, and campaigned for the release of Hugo Chavez while he was imprisoned. Maduro continued to contribute to the movement and slowly rose through the ranks due to his loyalty and competence. He was elected president of the National Assembly of Venezuela in 2005, appointed as foreign minister in 2006 and vice president in October 2012. His actions as foreign minister consisted of ending relations with Taiwan, supporting Muammar Gaddafi's Libya, breaking ties with Israel, recognizing Palestine, and supporting Bashar al-Assad during the Syrian civil war. In 2013, with the death of Hugo Chavez, Nicolas Maduro was voted in by the Venezuelan people. He continued to expand the social programs introduced under Chavez, and under the Maduro administration, 64% of the national budget as of 2015 was allocated to combat poverty within Venezuela. Maduro has continued Chavez's Great Venezuela housing mission, and by 2023, 4.6 million homes had been built. Food-wise, in the past, Venezuela imported most of its food. It now produces 94% of all food locally. Beginning in February 2014, Venezuela faced a US-led campaign of an attempted color revolution orchestrated through violent opposition street protests known as guarimbas, led by Leopoldo Lopez and Maria Corina Machado, who were funded by CIA-linked National Endowment for Democracy, NED, and in March of 2015, the Obama administration weaponized economic coercion, imposing unilateral sanctions and declaring Venezuela's actions as an extraordinary threat to US national security, which was a legal pretext long used to justify imperial intervention across Latin America. Attempts on Nicolas Maduro's life are not uncommon. In 2018, during an event in Caracas, 2 drones attempted to assassinate him in the middle of a speech. The attack was carried out by Soldados Defenales, a rebel group with connections to Oscar Perez, who was responsible for the Venezuelan helicopter attack of 2017, Juan Manuel Santos, the former president of Colombia, and agents within Florida. In August 2025, the United States launched an escalation of imperial aggression against Venezuela, deploying the USS Gerald R. Ford, multiple warships, F-35 fighter planes, and nuclear assets to the Caribbean, with them justifying it with lies about narco-terrorism, though by early September this led to murder. On September 2, 2025, US forces carried out the first of dozens of killings, bombing a small fishing boat and murdering 11 fishermen. This brings us to January 3, 2026. That morning, US Special Forces launched a coordinated military assault against Caracas. They bombed the infrastructure of Miranda, Caracas, La Guaira, and Maracay, with approximately 100 Venezuelans and 30 Cubans dying during the airstrikes. It was a combined attack of maritime strikes and airstrikes early in the morning, while covert ground forces raided the presidential compound and abducted both Nicolas Maduro and his wife Cecilia Flores. Images were then taken of him as a way to humiliate and delegitimize him. Both were taken to the United States and placed in a Manhattan detention center in Brooklyn. They were paraded around the courtroom for 35 minutes in order to manufacture a pseudo-legal farce to obscure the neocolonial nature of the US. The US then justified this regime change with fabricated criminal charges of narco-terrorism and drug possession. Though contextually there have been multiple clips of Trump stating he wants Venezuela's oil.
Venezuela. How about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door. But now we're buying oil from Venezuela, so we're making a dictator very rich. Can you believe this?
Following this trial, Washington threatened the now acting president Delcy Rodriguez to seize Venezuelan crude oil while inviting Chevron, Phillips 66, and Valero, all while holding revenue for themselves. As stated, The US government claims these funds are being held in custody of the benefit of the Venezuelan people and to prevent the remnants of the Maduro regime from accessing capital. All of this is to say, the abduction of Maduro is not an isolated case of Trump being himself, but rather an expression of capitalist imperial descent into neocolonialism. This operation is not only common, but part of a broader pattern reflecting the violent nature of US imperialism.